Howdy, howdy, howdy. We are coming in at 8:34 p.m. on Tuesday, the 31st of March, in the middle of the apocalypse. Not really. It's not really the apocalypse. It hasn't gotten, at least where we are, it hasn't gotten as bad as it is in other places of the world. I know it's rough out there in a lot of places. We've been really fortunate to be able to isolate pretty well and just kind of wait until we hear some good news. Today I'm doing some more free code camp. I went through this weekend and pretty much knocked out all of the algorithms and data structures. I feel bad because I didn't even think to stream. I might as well have, because it was there's a lot of stuff in, like a lot of good information, I guess, in there, and learned a lot of stuff along the way. Today we're looking at React, and I've actually done quite a bit of React. I mostly have used TypeScript when working in React, so it's kind of weird going actually back to just JS and using React. There's like some stuff that for whatever reason it has to come back to me. I noticed too, I did a few of these. I'm going to go back through these tonight, but I noticed that they're using an older version. Like they're not using, or not an older version necessarily, but they're not using some of the latest standards when it comes to React. And so we'll see, I guess, how that, I'm not sure if that's going to change. Kind of looks like they're going to, like binding this to the class method. That's a old school way of doing that. You don't need to do that really anymore as far as I know. So we'll see. I'm just kind of going through this because I want to go for this next certification, the front-end library certification, and I've already done these other guys, so this is where we're at. Okey-doke. I think everything's good to go. Looks like everything's coming in, so let's get started. So the very first lesson they take you through is just creating a JSX element. So a JSX element is basically just HTML, but in JavaScript. It would get a different file format, like we would save it as a .jsx instead of a .js if we were saving the file. Although you can, I think, write some JavaScript, or you can write some HTML and JS now, as long as you're importing React. So the first thing they want you to do is just put out hello JSX in this guy right here. And you can see in this little output window they show you that it's just a div, it's just coming out. So we'll run the tests. Oh, and it wants an h1 element. If I read the instructions, I would know that, but I'm just winging it. So it really is just like HTML. I mean, with some exceptions, which we'll get to in a bit. Should return an h1 element. What are you talking about? You mad at me for having a div? Oh, again, I should just read. I should take a second and read. There we go. All right, I'm going to read this one. Create a complex JSX element. Define a new constant JSX that renders a div which contains the following elements in order: an h1, a p, and an unordered list that contains 3 li items. Okay. Good to go. So create a new, did it tell me what they want it to be? New JSX, oh, new constant JSX equals, we'll call it a div, put my closing tag down here, go ahead and get our h1, reasons I love React, h1, and here are a few reasons. Then we need to open our unordered list. It's fun to work with. Sometimes. You can make really cool UIs. And it's another reason I love React. It has a cool name. little bit of indentation, just so it's not as messy. And I know this kind of looks like crap. I'm not sure if you can do that. Let's see. Oh, yeah, cool. That makes it look a little cleaner. Adding comments. So, what kind of thing do they want? Somewhere in the div without modifying the, okay. So we do comments like this. Oops. Oh, it closed it off for me. That's nice of them. Here is the H1 element. So it's pretty straightforward. Just using braces, and then I think this is like CSS. This is like, I mean, it's pretty common in a lot of languages. I think just standard JavaScript would be like, you could do your comments. Oops. That would be a comment in JavaScript. So in JSX, when you have a declared element, rather than doing something like what you would do in HTML, which would be like this, they actually kind of declare, they basically let you use JavaScript inline whenever you open a brace like this. And so this is just saying, I'm going to write some JavaScript now, and then you're just writing a JavaScript comment, basically. Pretty straightforward. Okay, ask me later. So now we're going to render the HTML elements to the DOM. So this is kind of cool. And it's kind of, I feel like this is a cool way to maybe learn React, but I feel like it's actually a lot easier on some levels to learn it using a thing like Create React App or something, because you kind of miss out on some of the setup that's necessary with a React project when you're just doing it here, where they're kind of handling all of this for you. And again, this is pretty old. A lot of this is pretty old information, so I don't know how great it's going to be. So they have this this method called render. You put in the name of the element that you're using, and then you target the ID of the element that they have on the page, and that is challenge node. What's it mad about? It's probably mad that I did this. Yeah, that's what it's afraid of. So if you look at, we'll inspect here. So you can see that they have this div in here that has the ID challenge node. So React basically gives you this render method, and you can pass in your component into it, your outlying component or your outermost component. And then you can just say which ID or which DOM node you want to mount it to. So you're saying document.getElement by ID, and we saw that it had the ID of challenge node. Go ahead and put this component there, and it puts the component out there. Okay, define an HTML class in JSX. All right, apply a class of my div to div. Right, so this is one of the areas that is different when you start to use JSX. Normally in HTML, if you wanted to do a class, you would do it like this. This is not going to work though in JSX. And I think the reason has to do with the fact that class is like a reserved word in JavaScript. They knew that, so I think that's why they basically made it so that you'd have this class name. So class name equals my div, and let's go ahead and run the test. I think that's all we needed. Yep. Submit. Okay, self-closing JSX tags. This is so weird to me that they even included this, because I don't understand why this is that confusing. I guess they needed to show you. You can close tags. These ones are self-closing. Yeah, so I mean, this is not even that great of an example. We'll see a better example here in a bit, because those were tags that I think if you've done any HTML, those have always been, you can always close those off. Create a stateless functional component. Right, so I don't know if I didn't really point it out, but we've been using classes this whole time. So the more preferred way, and really once you get into like modern day React, this is pretty common everywhere, is to use stateless functional components. especially now with React hooks, there's like no reason or very few reasons why you might want to use a class function. So a lot of people are moving their components into this stateless functional component pattern of doing things. So basically, you return your JSX there, and obviously we're really making these super basic. Eventually, you can do some really cool stuff within your components. What do they want? They just want a div element with some text in it. Div aren't stateless. I'm gonna say SFC. That's what the cool kids say. Cool. Yeah. And just because I'm curious, I think you can also pretty much just declare it like this. Yeah. And if you want to be really cool, you can use the implicit return, and we'll see if they let you do this. Yeah. So yeah, this is kind of like, this is the React that I'm used to. Like if you're writing a really simple component like this, you can basically just return it like that, which is nice. Submit and go to the next challenge. Create a React component. So yeah, this is where we're getting into some older stuff like constructor props and all of this. I don't think this is in most cases like needed. I know it's important for the class, but every example I've seen, or most of the examples I've seen, have not even needed that unless it's like a super old example. What do they want to do here? Oh, here, they might actually explain this here. Also notice the kitten class has a constructor defined within it that calls super. It calls super to call the constructor of the parent class, in this case, React.component. Interesting. So, that's something I never knew. So maybe that's what happened is when they updated a version of React or whatever, they basically found a way to avoid having to use this constructor syntax altogether and just assume that props are coming into it. Because what it sounds like is this React component has a constructor, or I should say this React component class has a constructor that takes props, and we're saying that we want our component constructor to take props, and that this super method maps into the React.component the props that we're getting here. I'm sure that's pretty confusing if you're brand new to this stuff, because I know that would not have made any sense to me before having some understanding of what constructors are used for. So they want us to render a div that contains an h1 element. Are we repeating ourselves here? This looks similar to what we've been doing. h1 hello React. Bing. Okay. What did I not read? I'm sure it's something I just didn't read. Finish writing the render method so that it returns a div that contains an h1 element. Oh, that's what I'm missing. You have to do these returns inside of, there you go. You have to do a return inside of here. Silly rabbit. Okay, so now we're getting into some composition. So we've got two components. We've got a child component that is just a div with a p or a paragraph tag inside saying I'm the child. Then we have our parent component with the div and the h1 tag saying I'm the parent. So really straightforward. They're just going to want us to put in the child component like so. And you see that you can pass, or you can use these little slashes at the end of your tags. That was those like self-closing component tag or self-closing tags, however they said that earlier. That's what they were talking about. Cool. Onward. Use React to render nested components. Okay, so they want types of food component should return a single div element. All right. Types of food component should return the fruits component. Okay, So we will return fruits. And beneath fruits, we will return types of fruit. Oops, types of frig. So they just want us to see that we can define a component that gets imported to another component, and then that component gets imported to another component. Doesn't really make a whole lot of sense when you have such a simple thing, I feel like, but when you get more complex with your components and stuff, they start to do more or have more functionality. It certainly makes more sense. Fruits component should return the non-citrus component. Non-citrus component, and they've defined those guys out of this file. Excuse me. Non-citrus. Citrus. And types of food. Fruits. Okay. Easy enough. Render a class component to the DOM. You may remember, blah, 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 but the fruits and vegetables components are defined for you behind the scene. So the types of food should return a single div. Types of food should render the fruits component after the h1 element. Okay. And the vegetables component after the fruits component. And then they want us to use our React DOM.render. I always thought it was confusing. Maybe it's not, maybe it shouldn't be confusing, but I always thought it was weird that these both had render. Like there's two render methods here. For some reason I thought that that would be different. So do I need to do types of food? And then document.get element by ID. What did they say? Challenge node. We not good. So in that. Nope. Should do a little check through fruits, vegetables. Oh, looks good. Oh, what's going on here? Types of food. Should return a single div element. And it is. Types of food component should render the fruits component after the h1, which it is. The component is children, and then render React DOM dot render. What am I missing here? Document.get element by ID. Am I spelling this thing wrong? Challenge node. Nope. Sometimes I've needed to do this, but I don't think that's the case. Wait a second, what do we got here? Document.get element by ID. Ah! Dang it. That was dumb. Dumb. Oh well. So we're getting our fruits and I don't know why they're making us do this. It feels like this is exactly the same thing. Let's see. Oh, I see. They're just saying that because this is a JSX element, that we have to import it, like we have to render it like this, as opposed to just doing it like we have been doing it. So, oops. So that is that. Write a React component from scratch. Remember, a typical React component is an ESX class. Blah, blah, blah. Okay, so we are creating a component called myComponent. Hello, myComponent. And it extends React.component. Oh, whoops. Extends itself. Component. Cool. And we have to do our whole constructor mayhem. Which really isn't that crazy, actually. The free code camp definition for that made a lot of sense to me. And we need it to have a render method, and in that render method, it needs to return an h1 tag that says, and it yells it at you, my first React component. Cool. Good, I think. Oh, and you gotta render it to the DOM. Dot render my component document dot get the lowercase element by ID challenge node, right? Challenge node. Why did I hit the enter key? There you go. All right, cool. Onward. Pass props to stateless functional component to a stateless functional component. Now we're getting interesting, and this is where it's going to be weird for me, I feel like, because most of the time that I've done prop passing, it's been with TypeScript, which I feel like makes things a lot easier in here. Maybe it doesn't. Maybe I just need to get over it and figure out how to do this. All right, so let's look at the first thing that they want. Calendar component should return a single div element. What's it returning right now? It is returning a single div element. In fact, that should pass. Yep. Second child of the calendar component should be the current date component, and it is. Cool. So it's coming up here. The current date component should have a prop called date. Current date component, props. Ooh. Current date. I don't see a prop called date. Let's see what I'm guessing they mean this. What date is it? Should contain a string of text. Tuesday. Alright, and current date is, tell it we're writing some JavaScript in here. Is that date? Tuesday. Date prop should be generated by calling date. Contain a string of text. Do they want me to just do like that? Okay. Current component should render the value of date prop in a p tag, and it is. Okay, cool. Real fast before we do that. So basically, we created the property. Anytime you have a property, and this is, I think, why it actually is a lot simpler without TypeScript. I'm just so used to TypeScript. It's hard for me to get used to this. You basically can just write the name of the properties in here. So you could also probably just say like the current, like you could say like adjective equals, and then you could say the current, and then pass in props dot adjective, and just say the current awesome date is. So it just gives you a way to pass in, basically just pass stuff down to other components. And you could do the same thing here where your calendar component could take in another property, and that could pass down to another one. Oh, and it's going to be mad at me because I'm passing in two props. Whatever. Okay, we're passing an array as props. Let's see what we got here. There are list and to-do components in the code editor. When rendering each list from the to-do component, pass in a tasks property assigned to an array of to-do lists, for example, walk dog or workout. Then access the tasks array in the list component, showing its value within the p element. Use join to display the props.tasks. Okay. Today, tomorrow. Change code below this list. All right. So, okay. Guess this is what they want. We'll do a list. We'll pass in, what do they say, tasks. Into the list. Property called tasks. And can you define a type on these guys? I didn't think you could. What does it mean when they say should be of type array? Have a property called tasks, and tasks should be of type array. Is there a way to assign? I don't know. That's what I thought we used TypeScript for. tasks, and maybe they just are saying stream react, oops, FCC react vid, make more cool videos. All right, and props.tasks.join, and we're getting a white screen. Let's see what is going on here. Oh, it's because I probably closed this guy right here. Right? List tasks. Why is this freaking out? Confused. Huh. I am confused right now. The list. Hang on, I'm gonna copy this really fast and just reset for a second. Oops. Okay. What's up here? So they do. Oh, okay. I see. So they just want me to do tasks equals. Got those tasks in there. Change code below these lines. Props. Interesting. I thought this is exactly what I did, but maybe not. Props.tasks.join. Do I need to do something else to this, what I'm passing in, these arrays? List tasks to do. We're getting any messages in here? Build error. Open your browser console to learn more. Well, what's the browser console saying? Console. Cannot read property.join of undefined. Huh. So, I think I know why this is happening. But it's weird that they didn't talk about this at all in here. Because I would think a lot of people would have problems with this. What I think they want is for me to make sure that there's a tasks item. Yeah, I only knew that because I've worked with React before. There, you kind of have to check. I think it's because it's like constantly looping through what you have in your code. You always have to check if a value exists before you try to write a method on it because it might be null. And I think there might be a new operator for that. I'm not sure if that's how it works or not, but I think there's a new operator for that. So are we good? Is that all I needed? Nope. Both instances. Oh, right. I have to give this one a list too. Tasks. Feed kitty. Feed kitty 2. Good. What else do you want from me? The second list containing. Oh, gotcha. I'm just being lazy. Feed fishy. All right. Using default props. Code editor shows a shopping cart component. Define default props on this component, which specify a prop items. Specify a prop items with value of 0. Okay, how does this work? My component. I don't think I've ever used default props before, actually. Dot default props equals. What do they want? Specify items with the value of 0. Is that all you want? Yeah, okay, easy enough. Override default props. So now I have items.default props, quantity equals 0. Shopping cart component now renders a child component items. The items component has a default prop quantity set to integer 0. Override the default prop by passing a value of 10 for quantity. Quantity equals. I just do. No, that's right. I still have to wrap it. Okay. Yeah, so basically they're just pointing out that even though we've defined in our items that the default quantity is 0, you can increase that, or you can still set it on with the property. I don't know why that wouldn't work that way. It seems like it's obvious that's how that would work. Use prop types to define the props you expect. Oh, there is a prop types. So this must be where like the huge debate from people that like TypeScript and React and people that don't like TypeScript and React come from. How does this work? Useful type features. For example, your application makes an API call to retrieve data that you expect from the array. That's the component. Prop types. Okay. Define prop types for items component to require quantity as a prop and verify that it is of type number. Okay. Prop type is important. Should render. So are these guys already passing? Yeah. The items component should include prop types check that requires quantity to be a number. Okay. So items.default props check the quantity. So then items dot prop types equals, and quantity needs to be a number. How does this work? So we quantity colon type of number. I don't know. Number. Oops. Is that what they want? No. I don't know how this works. Are they telling me over here how this works? Among the 7 JavaScript primitive types, function boolean. Oh, so do I have to do number dot is required like that? Is that what they want? No. Quantity number. I am missing something here. Please refer to the documentation for options. Here we go. Specifying the React element type. Maybe. Let's do a control of prop types. Type checking with prop types. Oh, okay. Prop types that number. Doop, doop. I think they did. Okay, that makes sense. That was the missing component, missing part. Prop types dot number and dot is required probably. Is required. Yeah. Okay. That's cool. And I guess if you wanted to do a string, you would do that. That's easy enough. I was just confused because it's different than what I've done for type checking. Access props using this.props. Several challenges cover the basic ways to pass props to child components, but what if the child component that you're passing a prop to is an ES6 class component rather than a stateless functional component? The ES6 class component uses a slightly different convention to access props. Anytime you refer to a class component within itself, you use the this keyword. To access props within a class component, you preface the keyword you want to use to access it with this. For example, if an ES6 component has prop called data, you write this.props.data. Yep. That makes sense. Reset password component should return a single div element. I like to just run these tests because it tells you what you should actually care about. Because a lot of times most of their tests pass just by default. Fourth child of reset password should be the return temp password component. Well, that's not the case. So we should do that. Return temp password. And I bet you have a prop that you need. Probably. The temp password should be equal to a string of at least 8 characters. PASSWRD. Wow, strong password. Oop, already had that. The return temp password component should display the password you create as the temp password prop. All right. So we open up our let's do JavaScript tags, and we do this dot temp password. Oh, this dot props dot temp password. There you go. Your temporary password is password. Cool. Review using props with stateless functional components. Code editor has a campsite component that renders a camper component as a child. Define the camper component. Assign its default props of name camperbot. Okay. I have to define the whole thing, huh? Const camper equals props. What do you need in here? So that render any component. Name value, okay. Oops, closing P. This, or props.name. Camper. Dot default props equal. I don't know how this will work. I'm not sure how that makes any sense, but oh well. Camperbot. Finally define a prop types on the camper component that will require. I've already forgotten how to do this. Camper dot prop. I feel like that is lowercase. Prop types equal name. And what did I want? Verify that is of type string. Prop types dot string. Right. Okay. And we're getting something out there. So looks like it's working, maybe. Camper component should include a prop types which require the name. Okay. Is required, I think. Is that all they need? Interesting. So is required doesn't mean that it has to be there. It means that whatever's in there is required to be the type that you declared. So I think I have time for like maybe one more or two more of these tonight. One of the most important topics in React is state. Oh yeah, now we're getting interesting. State consists of any data in your application, any data your application needs to know about that can change over time. Cool. What do they want us to do here? You have access to the state object throughout the life of your component. You can update it, render it with your UI, and pass it as props to child component. The state object can be as complex or as simple as you need it to be. Note that you must create a class component by extending React component. There's a component in the code editor that is trying to render the name property from its state. Okay, stateful component should exist in render. Well, that's not happening. But it's probably because we're not initializing our state. Equals. What do they want? Name. They give me a name. Nick. Yeah, is that what you want? Cool. Notice how we had to do the state inside of constructor. Okay, render the state in the user interface, and this one will be the last one probably for the night. In the component, in the code editor, my component is already stateful. Define an h1 tag, in the component's render method, which renders the name of, or renders the value of name, this.state.name. Okay. Should render h1, single enclosed in a single div. The rendered h1 should contain. All right, component. Nice. Cool. Well, that puts us at 9:15. Thank you for watching. If you've been with me for a little bit or for the whole thing, I appreciate it no matter what. I hope this is helpful for some people who are also looking at the Free Code Camp React course. Although, as I mentioned, based on what I've been seeing so far, there are much better resources, including just the React website. So maybe check those out. Thanks for watching. Have a great time wherever you're at.